Hello and welcome to the American Man podcast. This is your 5-day look back. Today is March 7th. It is a Friday. I'm doing a little bit early, posting on Saturday. So, what did you miss this week? Quite frankly, not much of anything. If you skip this podcast and don't look back at any news, you're really not missing anything that happened this week that will ever affect you or anyone you care about. The biggest thing that was in the news probably centered around two topics. The first, the continued fallout from Ukrainian President Zelensky's meeting with Donald Trump and the spat that they got into, which seems to be causing somewhat of a rift in the Conservative Party. There are still the hardline Ukraine supporters, and then there's the more libertarian and MAGA crowd who are opposed to the war. I'm still trying to work through it myself. It's hard to, consider, well, why should we support Israel but not Ukraine? What's the difference between two countries that get invaded by, an outside country or force? Unprovoked. Some people would say that the Ukraine, war was not unprovoked, and that somehow Russia was provoked. I think anytime you cross sovereign lines with tanks, that seems pretty unprovoked to me. But there's, obviously a lot of debate back and forth on that. And so, what it's worth, for what it's worth, it's a complex issue. I think to look at it in the light most favorable to the Trump administration, they simply are being pragmatic in that they don't think that Ukraine can retake the land that Russia has already taken, and so they're trying to minimize further loss of life, further economic damages, and they're trying to strong arm Ukraine into a peace treaty, which for whatever you think, it's we have plenty of problems in this world. They're not isolated to Ukraine. I mean, there's violence all over the world, violence all over Africa, South America. We have poured resources into fighting the Ukrainian war because, let's be honest, it's a proxy war against Russia. Our classic arch rival from the Cold War. What's the difference between pouring money into that versus pouring money into African countries where Christians are slaughtered by radical Muslim and ISIS groups? What's the difference between that and pouring money into fighting cartels in South America that lead to drugs being shipped into our country, loss of life, things like that. So, I think the Trump administration has decided there's a pragmatic approach that has to be taken to this. From a moral perspective, it's difficult to square these things. If I had to say, what's the difference between supporting Ukraine and supporting Israel, I think at the end of the day, the Israeli conflict, it's easier to see a resolution to that because they largely stand on their own. But again, it's not so clear, and I think that is causing division among conservatives. The other big thing that happened this week was basically the State of the Union address, which isn't a State of the Union address. It's just a presidential address to the joint sessions of Congress. Let's be honest about what these really are. They're giant pep rallies and campaign speeches. They get all their talking points. Whoever's in charge, they have all their talking points. Whoever's not in charge, they sit and they heckle and they boo. And really, in my opinion, make a laughingstock out of our political setup and our governance. I mean, anyone watching this across the world is going to just, I'm frankly embarrassed to have such a show being put on and at the same time having the reaction from the other major political party being one that is just such disdain for the presidency, and you know not even being able to put aside your political feelings to clap for the families of deceased individuals, people who were killed by illegal aliens, or the young boy who had overcome cancer. You can't even get the Democrats to clap for that. And a lot of those people are brought intentionally by the Conservative Party to make the Democrats look bad by not clapping. Um, it's all political theater, um, and it's unfortunate because these people have gone through just incredibly challenging lives and life changing events, and for them to be used in that way, I think is wrong. But at the same time, I think you know failing or being so dug in that you can't bring yourself to clap for a little boy who's overcome cancer, um, because you hate Donald Trump so much. I mean, there's something deranged in that as well. So I wish that we could get back to a little bit of um, modesty and decorum in our politics. I don't see that in the near future. Um, it really seems like, while the Republican Party has seemed to kind of come under the Trump umbrella and fallen in line for the most part, Democrats are really looking for a leader. They haven't found someone who can, for lack of a better term, corral them. I know that leadership did send out, a memo to their members about this joint session and told people, hey, we're not going to make a spectacle of this. Make sure you conduct yourselves accordingly and respectfully. Otherwise, they're just going to use this against us. And whoever is in charge, apparently didn't have enough pull to effectively message that across the Democratic Party. Um, so that really shows a lack of leadership, a void in leadership, that I think they're going to have to overcome if they're going to make any sort of gains in the near future. Um, so you've got to be united on this, and right now it's just a bad look for them. Responses and polling was fairly, um, clear that they supported the the address and President Trump's address. Um, Now I think those polls are going to be swayed because it started with the question, "Did you watch it?" And the only reason you're going to watch it is typically because you're already supporting the person giving the speech. So I don't think those polls are particularly useful, but the polls that were conducted did have a fairly positive, um, rating of the speech. So I think that, again, it's a giant pep rally. It's a weird kind of pep rally where you invite the rival school to come and sit in on the pep rally, um, and hope for the best. So I could do without another State of the Union address, or maybe like a 15-minute just quick update. But we certainly overplay it on both sides. So please stop. And that's about all that happened this week. It was otherwise pretty unspectacular. So have a good one.